The ballot for Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame vote has been released for 2024. And I pose to you guys, who would you vote for if you could only vote one player into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame this season? And the results were pretty clear. You guys were all in favor of Adrien Beltre entering the Hall. The question is, are there more players that should be joining him? Who deserves a vote for the Hall of Fame in 2024? Let's check it out. First up, we have first baseman Todd Helton of the Colorado Rockies. Yes, the Todd father had a 17-year career, racking up 369 home runs, 1,406 RBIs. He was a 5-time All-Star. He was up in the MVP voting several times, finishing as high as 5th in his career, winning Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers along the way. This is Helton's 6th year on the ballot, and his percentages have gone up every single year, where you're needing 75% to get in. So Helton is right on that edge. I don't know if I'm a guy who would vote for Helton if this was his first or second year. When you take a look at some of the other advantages and statistics we look at, he is definitely considered a Hall of Fame caliber hitter. He has 61.8 career WAR, and the average Hall of Fame first baseman hits at 65. But Helton's 7-year peak was definitely one of the best at 46.6 WAR compared to the average of 41.8. So Helton definitely has a serious case to get into the Hall of Fame. And when you compare him to similar batters, guys like Jeff Bagwell, Edgar Martinez, Luis Gonzalez, Vladimir Guerrero, his comparables are very similar to a number of Hall of Fame batters. So you have to think that Todd Helton, with those numbers, definitely is deserving of getting into the Hall of Fame. So when it comes down to it, I think Larry Walker really helped him out here in the fact that he was able to break through as someone who's elected to the Hall, who played a significant amount of their career in Colorado. So for me, yes, indeed, I would be voting for Todd Helton to get into Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. Second man up on my list is going to be Adrien Beltre. This is his first appearance on the ballot, so Beltre is definitely going to be a highly considered player. And when you look at the numbers, it makes a lot of sense. 477 career home runs, 1,707 RBIs, several All-Star appearances, high up in MVP votes, Gold Gloves, Silver Sluggers. His best season being the 2004 season when he hit 48 home runs and finished second in the MVP voting with the Dodgers. He was kind of a late bloomer, really blossoming in the later years of his career once he turned 31 with Boston and Texas. So I think that maybe skew things a little bit for Beltre, but he finished with more than 3,000 hits in his career, so you have to consider he's just about a guaranteed lock to make it through the Hall of Fame. And we compare him, 93.5 career WAR compared to the 68.4 career WAR for average Hall of Fame third baseman. His 7-year peak was higher, and his comparables are very good. He would compare out better than Dave Winfield, Eddie Murray, Cal Ripken. Miguel Cabrera is going to get into the Hall. So guys like that are definitely where Adrien Beltre fits, and he's almost a lock to be a first ballot Hall of Famer and well deserving. Next up, we have relief pitcher Billy Wagner, who played the vast majority of his career in Houston with some years in Philly and with the Mets as well. Several-time All-Star once again, high of 4th in Cy Young voting, which is very impressive for a reliever in his career. Billy Wagner was that prototypical shutdown lefty, but he did it in ways you just didn't expect. He had a massive fastball, and when you look at the comparables, yes, he doesn't have as high a career WAR as some of the other Hall of Fame relievers out there at 27.7 career WAR and a 19.8 7-year peak. Now, the tough thing with relief pitchers is so many of the relievers that are in the Hall of Fame already are known for pitching multiple innings. And that's just not the way of the world was when Billy Wagner was a relief pitcher. Multiple innings were not what was happening. Wagner was a shutdown closer. That was his job. And for me, when it comes down to it, you really have to compare him to guys that are similar at that time of frame. And the best comparable for me is comparing Billy Wagner to Trevor Hoffman. Wagner and Hoffman finished with almost identical WARs in their career. Hoffman had far more saves, but he had far more opportunities as well. He was a closer for a longer period of time. But Wagner had a better ERA plus, more strikeouts, a higher K rate, but he did walk a few more guys. But it compares very favorably, and Trevor Hoffman is in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know how you can look at Wagner and Hoffman's numbers and say that Billy Wagner is not a Hall of Famer. 7-time All-Star compares with Hoffman. So when it comes right down to it, I think you have a great comparison here, Wagner and Hoffman. And for me, because of this comparison, I have Billy Wagner making it to MLB's Hall of Fame. How about Carlos Beltran? 435 career home runs, 1,587 RBIs, 2,700 plus hits, a Rookie of the Year, several-time All-Star. Also finished high up in some MVP voting, finishing as high as 4th in his career. He bounced around a little bit through his career with the Royals, Mets, St. Louis, and towards the end even with Houston. The issue I take with Beltran is going to be not his numbers of his career, it's from that 2017 season with Houston and his involvement with the scandal that was involved there. You look at the numbers there, Beltran is a kind of borderline Hall of Famer when you start looking at numbers. His career WAR, about the same as a typical Hall of Fame center fielder. His 7-year peak, also very similar. What's going to be the knock against him, he was hired to be the Red Sox manager, but was fired because of his involvement with the scandal in Houston. I think voters are going to take this into context. For me, when you compare him to similar batters, guys like Andre Dawson, Billy Williams, is Carlos Beltran a Hall of Famer? Yes, he probably should be, but he's going to get knocked on this vote. Like it or not, he's going to get knocked on this vote. So for me, I'm holding off on this. I think Beltran needs to last a few more years on the ballot. I think he eventually is going to get in, but currently, would he have my vote for the Hall of Fame? No, he would not. Even though he's one of the best switch hitters of all time, I would vote no on Carlos Beltran for 2024. Our 5th guy up is the one that is the easiest vote for me. It's Joe Mauer. And for me, Joe Mauer is without question a Hall of Famer, and people are going to be really against this. But you have to remember, a 6-time All-Star, an MVP winner, a 3-time batting champion, and all this was taking place as a catcher. He had only one season where he finished with an OPS plus below 100, and that was at 98. He finished with one of the highest batting averages for a catcher of all time at 306. 388 on base, the 439 slug. Yes, I understand he played quite a few seasons as a first baseman, but his numbers as a catcher alone should be enough to get Joe Mauer into a Hall of Fame. When you take a look at some of the other numbers, it kind of looks like Mauer is kind of a borderline, maybe just under Hall of Famer. But you have to remember, he is a catcher. 55.2 career WAR is higher than the average catcher. His 7-year peak is what, in my mind, you really have to look at. A 39 WAR over his 7-year peak. 3 batting titles. And you look at his comparison to other catchers. His JAWS number, which is an average of WAR, and his 7-year peak WAR. Joe Mauer comes out as one of the best catchers of all time. And when you look around him, everyone else is already in the Hall of Fame. So Joe Mauer, without question, is a Hall of Fame-based catcher. And when you play your entire career with one team and lead them the way Joe Mauer did, I think that plays into the vote as well. So Joe Mauer absolutely is a Hall of Famer. There was a time in Major League Baseball when we hit 500 home runs, you were guaranteed lock for the Hall of Fame. And that, whatever reason, that is changing. And I don't question that. Part of that is the steroid era. But one guy who gets knocked on this is Gary Sheffield. Sheffield is one of the best hitters of all time. Yes, I understand he was not a very good defensive player, especially later in his career when he played predominantly as a designated hitter. So that is going to be a little bit of a knock. But David Ortiz is a DH who didn't play really any defense, and he is in the Hall of Fame. So Gary Sheffield needs to be looked at in a much different light. Gary Sheffield won a batting title, let's remember, back in 1992. He is one of the best hitters of all time. He grades out as a player who should be a guaranteed lock as a Hall of Famer. Now, his career WAR as a right fielder is below the average. That's predominantly because of his defense. His 7-year peak, again, just below. But one of the comparisons I need to make with you is with these similar batters around him. Gary Sheffield profiles very similar to guys like Chipper Jones, Mel Ott, Reggie Jackson. And it's the Reggie Jackson comparable that really makes sense for me. When you compare Gary Sheffield with Reggie Jackson, and Jackson was not a good defender either, let's be realistic here. Gary Sheffield comes out ahead of him in so many categories. He had more hits in less plate appearances. He had, yes, fewer home runs and fewer RBIs, but not by a lot. Better batting average, on base, slugging, OPS. OPS plus is almost a dead heat. 9 All-Stars and that World Series title with the Marlins. Gary Sheffield is, without a question, would get my vote for a Hall of Fame place. And this is his final year on the ballot, and I really think Gary Sheffield is very deserving of a Hall of Fame vote for 2024. You want to talk about fun players? How about Manny being Manny? Yes, Manny Ramirez is on the ballot. Career 555 home runs. Again, there's that 500 number that used to be a lock, and all those all-star appearances for Manny Ramirez. The thing about Manny, of course, though, is the embattlement with the idea of involvement with steroids. We don't have a full answer on that, although we kind of have some expectations there. Manny's getting down there in the vote as well, so he's got very little time left. When you look at the numbers, he is a legit Hall of Famer. Career WAR for left field average higher than the career WAR for the average Hall of Famer. 7-year peak right around the same average. His numbers come out, though, as a very likely Hall of Famer. Again, it's that steroid issue that hangs around him. Now, Manny Ramirez, without question, a character. But there was another kind of big guy who was a bit of a character that Manny Ramirez was involved with at the same time, in the same seasons, and that's Frank Thomas. And when you compare the Big Hurt to Manny being Manny, they compare very similarly. And remember, Frank Thomas is in the Hall of Fame. So with Frank Thomas in the Hall of Fame, why isn't Manny Ramirez in the Hall of Fame? Those numbers are nearly exactly the same across the board. So would I put Manny Ramirez in the Hall of Fame? Yes, I would. I think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. I think these players need to be a part of baseball's history. You can't tell the history of baseball without the steroid era, so Manny Ramirez needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Do I think he's going to get the votes? Absolutely not. Would Manny be on my Hall of Fame vote? Absolutely he would be. Next up, we have Mets third baseman David Wright. Now, David Wright is a very tough one because he only played 14 years in his career, 1,585 games. When he was good, he was very, very good. He grades out under Hall of Fame numbers, though. His career WAR compared to the average third baseman is under. His 7-year peak is slightly under. He was a good defender, had a couple of really great years as a defender. He was a super quality hitter. He compares very favorably guys like Ken Caminiti, Hanley Ramirez, and the big comparison for me is to Manny Machado. Because we're at this point in his career, when you take a look at Wright compared to Manny Machado, yes, David Wright has the advantage through all these numbers. But the thing is, Manny Machado's career isn't done, and he has a higher WAR. So what does that tell me? Well, that tells me David Wright in his prime was excellent. There just isn't enough body of work there to bring him fully around to being a Hall of Famer. Manny Machado at this point in his career is going to finish with a lot higher numbers because he's going to have more time frame here and is unlikely to get injured. So in my mind, Manny Machado is the future Hall of Famer. David Wright is just kind of there, who is a guy who didn't have an opportunity to properly finish his career. With that proper finish, yes, he's a Hall of Famer. Without it, you just can't make that distinction. So David Wright would not have my Hall of Fame vote. We have Chase Utley here, the famed second baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies. And when you take a look at Chase Utley's numbers, a very good numbers as a second baseman. 16 years, 1,937 games, more games than David Wright. But that's going to become a bit of an issue here later for me as well. 259 home runs, 1,025 RBIs. The counting numbers are there. Solid batting average, on-base slug, many, many good years of OPS plus. But the last 4 years in particular, not a great hitter. He had a very solid 7-year peak without question. You compare his WAR to the average Hall of Fame second baseman. Career is just under the average second baseman, but the 7-year peak is well above, and that's the difference with Chase Utley. The problem with Chase Utley is not Chase Utley. In my mind, the reason why I do not vote for Chase Utley is there is another second baseman who is not in the Hall of Fame, who was better in my eyes than Chase Utley. And that comparison is to Jeff Kent. Jeff Kent had a lower career WAR than Chase Utley, but beats him in virtually everything else. Hits, home runs, RBIs, batting average, slugging, OPS, OPS plus. Everything there counts as Jeff Kent being better than Chase Utley. And for the fact that Jeff Kent isn't in the Hall of Fame, that means I can't vote for Chase Utley to be in the Hall of Fame. So I think second baseman is going to be clogged up in Hall of Fame votes for a while because you can't put these guys in ahead of Jeff Kent, in my opinion. Therefore, I would not vote for Chase Utley. We finish off with two starting pitchers, and starting pitchers have to be looked at in a way that is much different than they used to be in Hall of Fame votes. Guys are not going to be winning 300 games in their careers. 200 is going to become a new standard, in my opinion. The best ability is still availability for starting pitchers. So guys that can eat innings and get 200 innings are guys that are very, very important in their careers and some of the best pitchers in baseball. And in my mind, that makes Mark Buehrle a very quality contender for Hall of Fame votes. 214 wins, more than 3,200 innings pitched, 14 years of 200 innings. So year after year, you got the absolute best from Mark Buehrle. Several All-Stars, Gold Gloves, World Series champion. Mark Buehrle did it all. As a Hall of Fame number you start looking at, he's probably under 59 career WAR compared to the average pitcher. But you have to remember, Hall of Fame pitchers before were throwing far more innings than they currently are. The 7-year peak, same thing, under, but once again, far less innings and complete games now than there was compared to other previous Hall of Famers. Mark Buehrle profiles, in my mind, very comparably to Zack Greinke. And Zack Greinke, I think, is someone who's going to be very quickly voted into the Hall of Fame once he becomes eligible. The thing is, you look at the numbers there. Similar numbers of games and games started. Very similar ERA and ERA plus. Greinke was more of a strikeout pitcher. That wasn't Mark Buehrle's game. Buehrle was a little better in terms of walk rate. But that was the fact that you could count on Mark Buehrle year after year, 200 innings for 14 straight years, nearly 15. That, in my mind, makes Mark Buehrle a serious contender for Hall of Fame. Not in his first year. He's going to take several years to get there. But Mark Buehrle would have my vote for the Hall of Fame. Last on our list and last on our potential ballot is starting pitcher Bartolo Colon. Yes, Bartolo Colon is on the ballot. And yes, I think he's someone that needs to be talked about. The former Cy Young Award winner who pitched all those innings with all those teams. The last player in Major League Baseball to be a member of the Montreal Expos back in 2002 when he split time with Cleveland. 20 wins that year, 21 wins in 2005 in his Cy Young season. He set the Major League record by throwing 38 straight strikes in a game for the Oakland Athletics. I think Bartolo Colon should be considered for the Hall of Fame. 247 wins is nothing to sneeze at. A 4.12 career ERA is probably not the best mark, but it is still very good when you compare him to other Hall of Famers. He's probably a borderline Hall of Famer in some ways. His WAR and 7-year peak are definitely lower than the average Hall of Famer. But like Mark Buehrle, we said, this is a change over time where starting pitchers are throwing less innings. So in my mind, Bartolo Colon needs to be evaluated like other starting pitchers in a different light. He compares very favorably to guys like Jack Morris, Andy Pettitte, Dennis Martinez. And when you make some of these comparisons, a la Jack Morris, Bartolo Colon compares so favorably to Jack Morris. And remember, Jack Morris is a Hall of Famer. Yes, a little bit fewer innings, just slightly fewer wins, but a better ERA plus, more strikeouts, a better strikeout rate, a better walk rate, a Cy Young winner. Bartolo Colon definitely needs to be considered for Hall of Fame votes when you compare him to Jack Morris. Now, you make that comparison to Zack Greinke, who, again, I think is going to be a likely Hall of Famer. And in that fact, Bartolo Colon doesn't come out as favorably. Zack Greinke is one who's definitely got Colon beat across the board in several numbers. But how can you not vote for a guy nicknamed big, sexy. With all the moments that Bartolo Colon produced in his career, I think he definitely is worthy of at least a vote on this ballot. He's unlikely to get into the Hall of Fame. He probably fits more the Hall of Very Good, but Bartolo Colon would certainly have my vote. Thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of another video. Make sure you comment down below if you agree with my Hall of Fame ballot, or tell me who you think needs to be on the 2024 Hall of Fame vote. Until next time, make sure you go check out some of my previous videos. We had a mystery box video that just went up recently. Go check that out. It's a ton of fun. I think you'll really enjoy it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Come check me out on the YouTube community tab, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.